Hello comrades, Nathan Hennebury, Secretary for the Glasgow branch of the Young Communist League of Britain. On the 7th of March, the World Federation of Democratic Youth alerted the world to the arrest of the first Secretary of the Ukrainian Komsomol, Mikhail Kononovich. His brother, Alexander Kononovich, has also been arrested. Both brothers have been accused of spying for the Russian and Belarusian security services, and concerns for their safety have been heard around the globe. This outrage is only the latest in a history of brutal repressions manifested against trade unionists, socialists and communists by the reactionary Ukrainian government since coming to power via the USA and NATO-backed Euromaidan coup of 2014. These attacks represent an affront to democratic practice and only distance the possibility of a true democratic resolution to the conflict. After being persecuted, repressed, kidnapped and tortured by the Ukrainian government through the Ukrainian Security Service, SBU, now the right to defence from these objectively false accusations is being violated. On the 21st of June, the World Federation of Democratic Youth updated the world on the Kononovich brothers' current situation. In the face of their kidnapping and torture, this is the choice they are being given. They are condemned to choose between having a lawyer that may be chosen by the brothers, but who will face obstruction by the regime in tabling an adequate and appropriate legal defence, or a state lawyer who will be at the service of the interests of the regime as opposed to the interests of the brothers' rights to defence from these aforementioned false accusations. With this choice, or lack thereof, their human rights will be completely violated where they are subjected to further state pressure to plead guilty to baseless accusations of, quote, forcibly changing or overthrowing the constitutional order or seizing state power, end quote, and, quote, public calls for violent change or overthrow of the constitutional system or for the seizure of state power as well as dissemination of materials calling for such actions, end quote, under parts 1 and 2 of Article 109 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine. They will face, at the very least, a decade in prison if found guilty, with state authorities attempting to force lifetime sentences in prison purely for their refusal to compromise their communist and trade unionist principles in the face of years of state-approved neo-Nazi and far-right attacks on themselves, their families and the working class communities of Ukraine. We demand 1. Their immediate and safe release. 2. A public apology to them and their families. 3. An end to the political repression of communists in Ukraine. The Scottish Government has aligned themselves unapologetically with the US and NATO war machines who continue to influence the anti-communist and anti-socialist government of Ukraine. The Scottish Government, instead of working for peace, has made a £65 million contribution to the UK's £1 billion Ukraine military package, furthering a commitment to imperialist capital. This will not result in peace, but in increasing terror, warfare and suffering of the communities directly impacted by this ongoing international power play. It is sickening to see the Scottish Government show support and provide military funding to the Ukrainian government. A government formed of Western puppets and fascist paramilitaries. These same puppets and fascists that are now in power in Ukraine were also responsible for the events of the Euromaidan coup of 2014. This saw countless socialists, trade unionists and communists murdered with the backing of the US and NATO spheres of power, most notably including a massacre of 48 trade unionists at the House of Trade Unions in Odessa in 2014. A massacre at the hands of those we now must entrust with the safety of our comrades presently in Ukrainian custody. It is imperative that the youth of Britain and the world reject NATO militarism and war at every opportunity and demand an immediate and peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. NATO cannot expand any further. It must be dismantled by the working people in all affected nations. We stand hand in hand with our comrades and young people across the world fighting for peace. We stand in complete and unflinching solidarity with the Kononovich brothers and we will not rest until they are free from imprisonment and persecution. We call on you, comrades, to sign our petition and to pressure the Scottish Government into acting to secure the safe release of the Kononovich brothers. If the Government show no desire to go against the whip of NATO, then it is highlighted once again to the workers of Scotland that this nation is already becoming a running dog for imperialism and will willingly play a damaging role in further proxy wars against China and other communist and socialist countries around the globe. Free Kononovich.